to see you too.
So I'm Heidi Petak, Dr. Heidi Petak. I live in the Colorado Springs area and teach communication here. And I'm the wife of a pastor, conservative Christian, vote Republican. I'm nervous but interested in having this conversation with you, Kellie.
Right, the conversation about what's going on with Judge Kavanaugh and that whole nomination. I'm Kellie Newton, and I live in Seattle, Washington, a very progressive person in a progressive area, and I've been a massage therapist for 20 years, and I've been training for the last few years to become a core energetics practitioner. So helping people to do deep psycho-emotional, body-based process work. And a lot of it is around trauma. Well, yeah, I'm a little dreading this conversation in a way, just nervous. And I'd been wondering in the last few days as this was going down, like, oh, I wonder how I guess I assumed I knew how you were taking it. And so when I got your text today saying, yeah, we should probably talk about this, I thought, yeah, we should. So.
Yeah, whenever these things happen that are all over the news and are so polarizing, I like to talk with you because I feel like it helps to center me and help me remember to not vilify the other side, but to know that you have a face and a name and you're my friend. Yeah. And so I want to hear it from you and from your heart rather than just watching the news and being swayed by what they're saying. So I would rather hear it from you.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that, and I echo that sentiment. Yeah, it's been really beneficial for me to have these conversations with you since we started them after the election, because it's really slowed down my knee-jerk judgment that I can come up with. Yeah. So, so where do we start?
So maybe go back to when the nomination first happened. Tell me what you were feeling when you found out that Kavanaugh was the nominee.
You know, I think to go even further back than that, as you might imagine, there is this lingering sense of injustice that happened with Obama's nominee when he was still 8 months, before his term ended. And other presidencies had similar openings come up in even later parts of the presidency with no problem, with a new judge coming to the table. And Merrick Garland was such a moderate pick that even Orrin Hatch loved. It's like he was liked on both sides of the aisle. And Obama was really trying to pick someone who both sides of the aisle. So it felt like a huge injustice that McConnell wouldn't even allow the vote to come. And so on this side, we feel robbed of that, and that felt completely politically motivated. It was absolutely politically motivated. So just with that in the background, to have this whole thing, like there's already a bad taste in my mouth, right? When Kavanaugh was picked, I reserved judgment. It was like I didn't know who this guy was, and I did read some stuff that said that he was groomed as a diehard conservative, and that doesn't sit well with me because I want to know that judges are more balanced in their approach. Like they shouldn't have a political agenda, I would be equally I would hope that I would be equally, you know, put off if somebody was a hardcore liberal activist too, you know.
I know. I'm trying to flip it right now and think, okay, so what if this was a really progressive liberal nominee?
Yeah. No, I hear that. And like if somebody, if there was a liberal nominee that in front of a panel said this is a vast right-wing conspiracy and this is Bush operatives having revenge, you know, this is revenge for like McCain not being elected, this is revenge for like, I would have a problem with that person being on the judiciary because I don't want anybody on the judiciary that is buying into some conspiracy. So let's just go there. So like I was really reserving judgment. And then this whole incident, and in fact, just to dial it back, I have a very conservative client and he and I love to talk about politics. And I love getting his point of view because he has a point of view that's outside of my bubble. So I'm always like, okay, give me the latest, give me the latest. And he's like, Kavanaugh has this huge track record, you know, and proven track record. So I was like, okay, well, there's at least that. Okay. Yeah. So then when this allegation came through, and then it's also like there are a couple other women that have come up, I wanted to at least hear the testimony.
Right.
And let's hope that this guy is good despite everything. Okay. Because judges should be impartial.
Yes.
So that's ultimately my answer to your question. And you could just see that like my energy is there and I just want to go with, you know, my case. So I apologize about that.
No, I understand. I think there's a lot of, I mean, that's why it's been such a firestorm in the media because there's a lot of energy around it for everybody.
There's so much energy. Yeah.
There's a lot, right?
So much energy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
I think when I found out that Kavanaugh was the nominee and knowing that he's a conservative, I was really excited. I was like, oh, yay, somebody who is on my side, if you will, or has the same values or will stand for the same things that I would stand for or would vote the way that I would, you know, that he would represent me well. And yet, I mean, from an objective standpoint, if I take that out of it, well, then I would say that, yes, the Supreme Court justices need to be objective as they're weighing all the sides, you know, but from a heart or a value standpoint, I think we all want somebody that would vote the way that we would vote. And so that's the hard part is that I feel like there's kind of two different parts of it that I really want to see objective justices there, but I also want justices that are going to reflect my values. Well, what do? You know, I think we're all in that place.
Right. You know, and as you would come to mind, as this has been unfolding in the last week or so, you know, I've been very aware of like, you're probably excited that somebody is poised to join the court who would be another vote against abortion, you know, another vote to outlaw that if or when it comes up for a Supreme Court consideration. And I get it. Like we've talked extensively about your viewpoints around that. And so it's like, I know that. And I don't agree with it. And I really hope it doesn't come to pass. I don't begrudge you wanting him because of that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I can understand it. Right. I think for me, where it gets wobbly in terms of like this side looking at it, I perceive a lack, not you, but in the process, right? I perceive a lack of willingness to consider the entire landscape in play, as due to having such a focus on what is wanted, which is what is wanted is a conservative judge that will promote the conservative agenda. And because that focus is so adhered to, I'm watching these white old men senators dismissing a very credible person, Dr. Ford. Like, she was able to speak to the neurobiology of why her memory is indelibly printed on her brain, you know, and you can appreciate that as somebody who's studied that too. And for her to, and she had nothing to gain by testifying, right? And so they listened to her and they basically ignored her because they have nothing to gain to consider that she may be telling the truth, okay? And that is what deeply disturbs me. And that's where I go, is, you know, that's where I have this fear of knowing whether your desire to have a conservative judge eclipses your need to have the landscape be fully supportive of that. Does that make sense to you? Like, the landscape being like, he may very well have a drinking problem, a sexual assault history, a temperament issue, as demonstrated in his testimony. Like, to me, that showed somebody who doesn't deserve to be on the judiciary, the way he comported himself. Had he said, oh my gosh, I feel so badly for your story, it wasn't me, but I'm recognizing that she had an incredible amount of trauma, and that just tugs at my heart. Like, if he had that response, I'd be like, okay, I may not agree with him, but at least he has a temperament. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm.
There were times I wished he was responding differently, for sure. Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think there were times that I thought, man, he's kind of screwed either way, because if he acts really, really angry, then they're going to say he's not objective enough to be on the Supreme Court, which you would be really angry if you're wrongly accused. But if he wasn't angry enough, they would say, well, he's not defending himself. So it probably is true if he's not defending himself with the anger that should go along with being accused of something like that. But yeah, I felt the same way as you with, I thought there should have been more empathy shown to Dr. Ford, because I do believe her story. I believe that she did experience that. Now, whether or not it's Kavanaugh, I don't know, because I think a lot of years have passed since then, and I think there's a chance she could have the people wrong in it. I also am very concerned that he has a drinking problem. I mean, he said he likes beer, and he liked beer then, and he likes beer now. And I think for someone to drink in excess like he has, that raises a big red flag for me. That's probably my biggest red flag, because if somebody drinks to excess like that, then he could have blacked out and done that and didn't even know that he was. You know what I mean? So I think that concerns me very much for a Supreme Court justice to have a problem with alcohol or be as much of a beer lover as he is. I don't think anybody in the highest court or in any high position should let themselves be controlled by alcohol, because you do really stupid things when you are controlled by alcohol. So that's probably the biggest thing that affects my trust in him as a nominee, and that is what would give me pause if I was a senator and had to make that vote. I would prefer to find someone who didn't have that love of alcohol the way that he does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have to say, it just like calms my system down to hear you say that. Like,
I can see that. I can see that in your face.
because again, I really feel like I'm not. Yeah, I just like sitting in the knowledge of I really was reserving judgment about Judge Kavanaugh until this hearing, and then seeing how he was in the hearing and the whole like, have you drank to excess? I don't know. Have you? Like,
I did not like that. I mean,
what judge does that?
The question, because she asked the question, have you ever blacked out when drinking? And he goes, I don't know. Have you?
And I want to know. Yeah.
And he asked it twice. He said, well, I don't know. Have you? And no, you need to just answer the question. And if you've ever blacked out, well, then you need to say, yeah, I have blacked out.
Right. And it does. And like, I just have to say, like, I'm so relieved they're calling for an FBI investigation.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, because if he does get nominated and if he does not nominated, confirmed, like put into the Supreme Court, and there was no FBI investigation, as the American Bar Association said in their letter calling for an FBI, this will degrade the office of the judiciary. Like, if they do it and they don't find anything, fine, put them in.
So here's my question. Yeah. If they do it and they don't find anything, would you be okay with him filling that seat then?
Well, I'll put it this way. Again, I don't love that he is so firmly in the pocket of conservatives, right? I don't love that. Right. Because I personally want my daughter to be able to have control over her own body, and I'm going to have serious questions about his professionalism. What's the word is escaping me? I just used it. Like his what? Decorum. Yeah. His basic personality, like his ability to see things in a grounded and balanced way, because how he comported himself in that hearing was a man who has a rage problem, possibly a drinking problem, and is someone who is blinded by his own self-interest. And yeah, I hear your point about like he's kind of he can't win either way, but from where I'm sitting, like I said, had he shown more compassion and more grounded, like awareness of like, this woman is totally distraught.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I didn't do it.
Right.
Like that would have gone a long ways with me. Yeah. A long ways. So
I can see that.
So am I going to be totally okay? But the FBI investigation will not completely erode my faith in our Congress. Let's put it that way. Because if those senators had rammed his confirmation through without an FBI investigation, there have been FBI investigations for others, nominees, other situations. Like, what's the problem? Let's just clear it up.
Right.
So I'm grateful to Senator Flake for actually being the one that made that a reality.
Yes, I am too. I appreciate that. I think one of the things that helps me in this, if he is confirmed, is that he has a track record of decades of treating women well and of so many women who have said that he was respectful and that he it was encouraging to them in their careers, and that just scads and scads of women that have signed petitions to say that you know, he's a trustworthy man, and that does help me a little bit, even though, you know, I don't know that we're going to ever get to the full truth, because we don't have corroboration or witnesses or the things that they need that they would normally be able to use in a court of law to convict somebody or not convict somebody. We don't have some of those things, but to, like what your client was saying, to have a track record like that does help me a little bit. Does that help you at all?
Yeah, it was interesting. I'm sitting here being aware of like, oh, interesting. I haven't read about the scads of women who've signed affidavits about how
watching Fox News.
Yeah, I haven't been watching Fox News.
Oh, that's why.
Right. But I did read an article about Amy Chua, who incidentally was the one that wrote the Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mom. She's the person in charge of prepping the people who wanted to be his interns or his clerks, who wanted to work for him, you know, as part of their law training, right? And so many of those women have written about how Chua would tell them, you need to dress this way because he likes a certain look, you know, like, and it was always women who were gorgeous, and she always told them to wear, you know, like dress in a way that amplifies their looks, this, that, whatever, you know. And of course she denied that, but there are several women who had written about that. So, you know, that's what came across my
game, because I never heard any of that on Fox News.
Right, of course not, right? Anyway, that's all to say we're obviously still in our little news bubbles, right?
I mean, I have tried hard to watch some CNN clips and read, you might scoff at this, but the Washington Post and, you know, some...
Well, it is more liberal now that Bezos owns it, right? So,
but trying to, maybe was it Huffington Post that you scoffed at when I said I had read it or was reading that?
Yeah, I don't read the Huffington Post.
Huffington Post.
Oh gosh, yeah, the Huffington Post is like, you know, the Fox News on the left, you know, so.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting because, and interesting too, what I'm noticing in me as I'm hearing you say about these women that are, would say you need to dress in a certain way. Well, then I, in my mind, go, well, sure, because if you're going to take a job and represent someone or work for them, then they would say, yeah, make sure that you
this article,
or make sure that you look professional, and if you're going to work in this office, this is the culture of it. So just to
it wasn't in that spirit. These women were talking about, like, it was more of like, make sure you look, beautiful and, you know, feminine and all of that, because he has a certain look that he likes.
Okay.
So again,
interesting.
You know, where the truth actually lies, we don't know. And what I keep coming back to in our conversations together is like, what deeply calms me and makes me want to continue to have a connection with you is your ability, our ability with each other to like just slow things down and really take in what the other person's perspective is and consider that, and not just try to hammer our point, you know, without listening.
Yeah.
And
one thing maybe you can help me understand. I mean, I understand some of it, but so there's these protests happening and these women walking around with duct tape on their mouths and just seems to be so much emotion and fear around women not being believed and things like that. And so is there room to believe Dr. Ford and also to believe Kavanaugh? Is there room for both, or does it have to be one or the other? And do you think that great big protest duct tape on the mouth business is necessary for the forward progression of women? Or help me understand that.
Okay, so with apologies for suddenly being made into a spokesperson for women who have been sexually assaulted, I've never heard from you whether that is an experience that you share, but I have been sexually assaulted, and by someone very close to me. And not nearly as traumatized by it as some other levels of sexual assault that I've heard of. And although there was trauma there. So there is something so horribly gut-wrenching and disturbing about this whole watching this unfold. I personally have very, very vivid memories of what happened when I was 3 years old. Very. Because as Dr. Ford said, it is imprinted in the memory because of the intensity of that situation. And I absolutely remember who it was. And I was 3.
Wow.
Now, we can have an argument about whether a 3-year-old can actually remember who it was, right? And Dr. Ford was 17, a more formed brain at that point, right? So for any woman that has had that experience in her life, and it is breathtakingly horrifying to realize it is so many women, more than you can possibly imagine, to have this situation unfold and watch the same things happen of being dismissed, being ignored, being placated, basically all of that energy being put towards just make her go away. Just give her time, but don't really pay attention, to beyond like just placating it, and then we're just going to move forward. So is it necessary, all of those protests? It is necessary for the women doing those protests.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, is it necessary for me to go and stand with duct tape on my mouth? No. But it is definitely necessary as a result of this for me to be reaching out, and this is what I've been doing, reaching out to my female friends who I know have had similar experiences, because it is so disturbing in my system. And the problem is that women are still dismissed.
Yeah.
So your question of can Ford be believed in conjunction with Kavanaugh being believed, I don't think we are at the place where we can do that yet, right? And he has consistently told white lies through the entire nomination process. Like, he said he didn't watch Dr. Ford's testimony, and yet somebody reported that he was at Pence's watching it on the TV. So I'm not at the point where I can say he's believable.
Yeah.
You know? And so I don't know how to give you an answer to that. I think there are scenarios where, yes, we could believe two people on opposite sides, that there may be concurrent realities going on. But in this case, I'm not there yet, right? And yes, it's largely because of the lens that I'm looking through in my history. And there's a huge collective lens going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely see that. I definitely see that.
Yeah.
So the women with the duct tape on their mouths are all women who have been sexually assaulted?
I don't know that for certain.
Okay.
I wasn't, I haven't seen that, you know, like I'm reading a lot. I'm limiting how much video I watch around it because it's just too disturbing to me, right? So I'm reading transcripts instead. And I mean, I heard the audio of women accosting Senator Flake at the elevator. But I don't know how to give you a better answer.
No, that's good. And I appreciate your honesty with that. And I honestly hadn't heard that Kavanaugh had said a lot of white lies along the way. And again, that might be because of the news that I'm getting. I hadn't even heard that side of it, but that would make it, I can see how that would make it very, very difficult for you to believe him or trust his sense.
And it's nothing egregious, but it's just been a lot of little, like, I'd have to go back and, you know.
But I didn't know that you had been assaulted when you were 3, Kelly. That's terrible. Terrible. Terrible.
Yeah. Thank you.
I've definitely been had both men and women be physically inappropriate with me over over time. And there was a total stranger at an eye doctor. I was standing at the counter at the eye doctor, and he came out of the bathroom and put his wet hands up my skirt and then ran out of the eye clinic. And I reported it immediately. The police came, they hunted for him, couldn't find him, but that was one of those, like, what was that? Like, really? You got some kind of pleasure out of putting your wet hands on my skirt? But it's a very violating feeling. And, you know, if I go further out with experiences like that, then I can definitely empathize with those experiences of having people being violating to you.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So how has all of this been hitting you? I'm realizing I haven't asked that specific question, and I apologize if we've gone so long without me asking that.
Well, a number of different ways. If it isn't true, I'm really sad for Kavanaugh and his family. And I saw his wife behind him crying while he's testifying. Like, what I'm reading into it is she's going, oh my goodness, I can't believe my husband even has to answer these questions when I know him to be the most wonderful, loyal, upstanding, respectful person ever. And that's what I was reading into her tears. And so I was very heartbroken for him having to answer for this. And then hearing that his 10-year-old daughter prayed for Dr. Ford, and was really touching for me, and very, very heartbreaking at the same time. Just thinking, I think of if I'm his wife and my husband Brian having to defend himself before the entire nation if he hadn't done these things, that would just be absolutely traumatic. I don't know how you recover from something like that. And at the same time, I'm watching Dr. Ford and her testimony, and I'm absolutely heartbroken for her and what she went through. I mean, as she's telling this story, I'm putting myself in that room. I'm putting myself as being the one who's being held down and all that she went through. And how traumatizing for her. And of course that that experience shaped the rest of her life. And I'm heartbroken for both of them. I really am. I wish there was a way to get at the truth. And I think that's the thing that is the most troubling for me, that I just keep praying that somehow the truth will be known. Because if it is true that Kavanaugh did those things, then he should definitely not. I don't want him on the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And if it is true that it was not Kavanaugh and it was someone else, then I want Dr. Ford to know who that was so that she can put it to rest and not have Kavanaugh's face in her mind if it's somebody else. Mm-hmm. But it has kept me up at night, and Brian and I have talked about it a lot, and how it's just another instance of how polarizing our political scene has gotten. And now, once again, we're reading this just vitriol that people are throwing at each other on the media and on Facebook and everywhere else. And thankfully, I do see there are people, like a friend of mine that posted today on Facebook. She had also been sexually assaulted, and she went forward with it and was completely dismissed. And she said, I want the truth to be known. And she's a conservative. She said, I stand for truth. I always stand for truth. And at the same time, we cannot dismiss women. Women cannot be dismissed. So it's a both and I don't know how the both and even can happen in this scenario, but my heart breaks for both of them. Mm-hmm. And for all of the women like you and like all these women with duct tape on their mouths that I want to stand and support. I have, I'm a professor, and I've been encouraging my female students, some of whom have been sexually assaulted and have written me and told me about that. And I've wanted to find ways to love them and encourage them and support them and validate them and all of the emotions that they're feeling. And I think so much of this it's bubbling up to the surface of we have the Me Too movement, but seeing this front and center just is a visceral reaction for so many of us watching it play out. And we don't want to see Dr. Ford be dismissed. And as a woman, I don't want to see her be dismissed. I want to see her be believed.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, Heidi. Really good to hear. And just as a quick side note, like I am sorry, my eye's really itchy. One of my Facebook friends, a man, posted, he was just very transparent and vulnerable. He said, I heard that line, indelible in the hippocampus is the sound of their laughter.
Yeah.
He said, and at that moment, I started hearing the giggling in my head of the neighbor who molested me when I was 9. This is a man. And he said, and I've been undone all day. And now today I'm supposed to go and take care of my clients doing massage. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. It's just like, oh my God, that was so, I mean, I'm so used to hearing that from women, and then to hear that, like, it's even affecting men who have been traumatized by that as well, you know.
Yeah.
It's something, I mean, I just have to believe something is opening to be healed. I hope, because it just breaks my heart to think of it as it's just, you know, opening up and going to be trampled. Well, and I do hope that he's innocent.
Yes.
Put it that way. I do, because it just sounds so, it would be horrific.
Yeah. I have 4 boys. I think of any of them ever being accused of assaulting a woman, and I would come undone if they were falsely accused.
Right.
Well, as you speak of, a wound has been opened, and we pray that there would be healing. I in one way, loved and hated that the National Call Center for sexual trauma or for sexual abuse, or the sexual abuse hotline. Did you see that? That they had like a 200% increase in one day of people that are coming forward and calling and telling their stories of what happened to them. And that I'm really, really glad for that. There's something redemptive in that there are people that are getting the courage even more now to call and talk about their abuse. And I'm very grateful for whatever courage they're having, that Dr. Ford is giving them.
Right. And simultaneously the heartbreak of like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's why I say I love and hate it. I mean, I hate there's that many more that haven't told anybody that are finally saying it. And yet I'm glad that they are getting the courage to say it.
Mm-hmm. It's complex.
It is complex. It really is. You know, when we have these conversations, when we initially start talking, I see us visually as being on separate sides of a fence, and we're, you know, having this kind of like, I'm over here and you're over there, and let's tell each other our sides. You know what I mean? And then as we start talking, then I feel like we're like inching forward together, and then we just end up sitting on the fence and having a conversation. Or it's more like, you know, we're sitting at a table drinking coffee, and
the fence becomes a table that we
and then the gulf doesn't feel quite so wide, which I think is the purpose of this. And if anybody is watching this and they feel like there's a great big gulf between, I'll speak to you. If you feel like there's a great big gulf that you who are watching between you and the other side of the political fence, go have a conversation with somebody. Look them in the eyes, speak what you're feeling, and make a connection, because it makes all the difference.
I'll wiggle my fingers to that, which means I totally agree.
Love you, Kelly.
Love you, Heidi.
Good night.